So Apple breaking out a nice gap up today. Now, what was kind of interesting, when we had that big sell-off day right here on Tuesday, Apple didn't go any lower. And I think in the Traders Talk, we talked about how that was a little bit of a support area there. So Apple did not go lower. It was able to bounce a little bit yesterday, but still it was a pretty sideways day. Today is where we got that big momentum. So now let's look at eSignal here for a second. And what you can see is that on eSignal, let me switch this out to Apple. Okay, and what Apple did is they trended up nicely pretty much all day long. We'll see in our class in a second. All right, so they trended up through this big momentum push all day long until the very, very end where they flattened out and traded sideways. So there were a lot of opportunities if you were actively watching this pattern on Apple. And I think a big signal today with Apple came from the gap up. Now, when you get a gap up like that, we've talked about this before, and here in the Traders Talk, we'll talk a bit about gap strategy and how that comes into play. Well, gaps feel scary a lot of times, and it's easy to think a stock has gone too far. But if it gaps up like this, maybe it could come down. But you can't bet on that until you give it some time. Apple gapped up, and it did sell off initially, but it came down really just to the top of the Bollinger Band. And it bounced from there. And it was, if you use that 5-minute rule that I talk about a lot, trading became bullish on that second candle in when Apple made it above the previous, that very first candle body of the day. So even though with gaps you might look at them and think it's gone too far, if on that second candle, if it's moving higher, you've got to realize that this was a breakaway gap, and it's the beginning of a bullish move, and those are often really tradable. So in a breakaway gap, you've got an entrance to the trade there, and you also have opportunity on the different pullbacks throughout the day. And you can see several times here where Apple would pull back. You got some nice dojis at a 10 moving average, but would pull back to the moving averages, and it would bounce. Now, at the end of the day, here's where Apple flatlined. But keep in mind, it's not that surprising given the fact that the S&P was already trading pretty flat. So we had the S&P that was flat. We have Apple that the bands are pinching together, and this is starting to go sideways. So what this can do is we could use these bands for a setup tomorrow.